Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Judith Patterson. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Texas, and today I'm going to show you how to make a fun card with the Sunny Splash stamp set from Stampin' Up! This is the coolest set, y'all. I love the swimsuits and the fonts and the different greetings that they have on here. So often it seems like we use the same ones over and over, just a general happy birthday, thanks, hello, which I love, and they have their place, and I use them all the time. But every once in a while, it's fun to change it up a little bit. So I've been having a great time this week using this set, and I actually made this card earlier this week, but it's a little bit more, it's got some more steps than I normally create with, and so I thought it would be a great one to hop on and create a video to show you how you can recreate this one at home or something similar. So we're going to be coloring, we're going to be fussy cutting, we're going to be embossing, masking. There's really a lot to this one, but don't let that scare you because none of these things are hard. They're all really easy. I just thought it'd be easier to show you how to do it with a video rather than try to explain it in a blog post. And yeah, let's get started. So I did something a little different, and I decided to go ahead and give you a screen here there where you can pause it and gather all your stuff. So if you want to, you can go ahead and stamp along with me. And hopefully I have all the measurements correct. I'm pretty sure I did. This is what I cut and prepared, so hopefully it's right. We'll see. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and move to the desktop now. And let's start by coloring our designer series paper. So this is from the Perfectly Penciled designer series paper set package. So you get all of these great black and white images that you can color. Every sheet has a side that you can color and a side that is great just left alone as it is, or you can color both sides. It's really up to you, but there's some beautiful designer series paper in that package, and I always love to have black and white patterns that I can leave as is, like I said, or color and make them your own and make them whatever you want it to be. So I'm using the light granny apple green, and I'm just going to go all over all the leaves and the stems. And remember, you don't have to color what's in the exact center of this card because you're going to be covering it up with a smaller black piece of paper. So anything outside of that, you really don't need to color. So I'm going to be quiet and get some coloring done so I can speed this part up in a minute. Okay, so now I'm using my dark Daffodil Delight blend to color the centers of all of these flowers. I like the way that these flowers look with them just white. I think that's really pretty with the shading that is already on the designer series paper. However, I decided to add a pop of color, and I'm using the dark Melon Mambo to color the petals. But what I do need to do now is stamp make A. I'm not going to stamp the splash yet. So I want my white embossing powder handy. I need my Versamark pad and my little embossing buddy. And I don't know if you've noticed, but in the mini catalog, it looks like this. Over on well, I'm going to look in the back first because that's a little faster and easier since I can't remember the page number. So on page 49, we have an embossing kit again. So you get the embossing buddy, a little paintbrush. This is actually a wide paintbrush, but very, very handy. And this is like reverse tweezers to make it easier to hold your cardstock while you're embossing. And then this tray, so instead of using something like this, you can pour your, so like I hold my cardstock over this, and I pour my embossing powder over it, and then I shake it off. So you can do all of that inside this tray, and then this cap comes off, so that and then you can use your paintbrush, and you can brush all that down back into the container to use again. So very handy. I have not purchased one because I already have all of these things from Stampin' Up! From years and years ago. Actually, my reverse tweezers aren't Stampin' Up! But these are, and it would be really handy. So this whole set is $27 in the US. Very amazing. If you do a lot of heat embossing, I definitely recommend getting it if you don't already have something like it. Okay, enough of that. Let's heat emboss. So I'm using my embossing buddy and just going over my cardstock really quick. It helps get the static and stuff out. I don't know all the details, but I just know it makes embossing better. So I'm going to use a Post-it note and cover up a splash, and I'm just using Versamark here on the make. Then I'm going to put that down on my card. Gonna stamp off a couple of times, and then I'm gonna use my chamois to clean it off. You don't want your chamois to be too wet doing this, since you're going to be using the stamp again right away. So I'm just wiping it off with the corner of my chamois, which is just slightly damp. Stamp a little to dry that off a bit, and then I'm going to use 2 Post-it notes. One to cover splash, and I'll reuse that same one to cover make, and then I'm going to ink A. And I'm just barely tapping it, but I'm tapping it a lot because I want to make sure it's good and inked up. So then I'm going to stamp the A right here, and notice I moved the Post-it notes because the Post-its have Versamark on them too, and I don't want a Versamark smudge on my cardstock there. Okay, so now I'm just going to cover these with white embossing powder. Ooh, got something in my white. Make sure it's covered really well. Alright, so now I'm going to set that with my heat tool. Should have grabbed those reversible tweezers I was talking about because my fingers were getting a little toasty on that one. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put my lid back on this. Set it aside, and this time I'm getting out my clear embossing powder. Now my clear, see if I can zoom in. You can see it has some sparkle in it. A long time ago, we used to have dazzling diamonds in Stampin' Up, and I somehow managed to get it mixed in with my white. So that's how long I've had my white embossing powder. It lasts a really long time. So as long as you keep it cool and dry and do all the great things. So this time, This time I'm going to grab my handy Stamparatus and just ignore this. I've used it for other things a lot lately. So I'm going to place this scrap again down here, and I'm going to use my magnet to hold it still, and then I'm going to put splash right here. And I'm going to be fussy cutting around this, so this time I really don't care that it's all possibly going to get inked. Still, I don't need to ink the whole thing. Alright, so I'm stamping it in the Tahitian Tide. That's better. So I'm stamping it into Tahitian Tide, and then I'm going to use that chamois again and clean that off. And again, my chamois is not very wet, but I'm going to go ahead and take my microfiber cloth and just give that a pat and make sure it's pretty dry. Okay, so now I'm taking my Versamark, tapping that again, getting the splash part all inked up with Versamark, and then I'm going to stamp right back over that original splash. Now I'm going to take that piece, actually let me move my Stamparatus away. So now I'm going to use the clear powder. I'm going to make sure I go over splash really well with the embossing powder. I like to kind of give it a little tap and make it go this way and then this way, down and up. Do it again. The clear is harder for me to see. My eyes are not as good as they used to be. So I think we're good. Yes, definitely should have had my tweezers because my thumb is so toasty right now. Okay, so I do recommend stamping your swimsuit like we did earlier and then stamping splash, because you want to make sure that you have enough room to fussy cut both of them out. And I would not recommend fussy cutting the swimsuit until after heat embossing the splash, because you want to have room to hold that piece of cardstock while you're heat embossing. And even at that, without the tweezers, you do run a risk of burning your fingers. My poor little thumb, I think it's going to be red for a little bit. I'm a little sensitive. Okay, so now let's fussy cut. Remember, while you're fussy cutting, it's good to hold your scissors as still as you can and move your cardstock rather than your scissors as much as possible. You'll get a smoother cut that way, and you just have a little bit more control. The swimsuits are perfect to practice fussy cutting on because there's just not a lot of sharp corner, not really any sharp corners, and it's a pretty basic image to cut around. Very forgiving. Doesn't take long at all. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing around splash. So I think I'm getting a little too nitpicky. I'm going to quit there. And let's start assembling our card. So grab your Tahitian Tide card base. Make sure it's opening up on the right side. Did you see that? I had grabbed it backwards. So I always just like to look and see which side looks the best. These are the same, so I'm just going to do that. And then you can use Stampin' Seal, tear and tape. I like liquid glue. I'm just going to center that here on the front. There we go. Okay, and then grab that Designer Series paper that we colored with our blends. And then center that piece over the black. And you're just leaving a very small frame. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the Tahitian Tide on top of the basic black. And you could use Stampin' Dimensionals for this part if you want to just kind of pop this up a little bit. I'll be using mini dimensionals in a minute, so I'm going to just go ahead and keep using my liquid glue and put this on the center of the card flat. Okay. Oh, I almost forgot a step. Okay, so I have this 2-inch square piece of vellum, but I want it to be a circle. So I'm going to grab my Stylish Shapes dies with my mini stamp cut and emboss machine. I need plate 2. Then here's my little vellum. So if you have scraps of vellum cardstock, I always keep those. I just keep them in an empty stamp case here at my desk, so they're easy to grab, and they're perfect for things like this. So I am using the 3rd smallest circle from the Stylish Shapes dies to cut the circle. Go ahead and close my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine up. That is a mouthful every time. It needs a nickname. And then I have my circle ready. So I'm going to get my mini Stampin' Dimensionals. Grab a couple of those to put here on the back of my swimsuit. I'm actually going to use 4. If I was using the standard Stampin' Dimensionals, then I would just use 2, one at the top and one at the bottom. But I'm going to go ahead and do it that way. And then I'm going to go ahead, I grabbed one too many, so I'm going to put that on the back of my splash. Okay, so now I can put this right here on my circle, and then I know that my glue can go behind the swimsuit so that it won't be seen. So I'm going to place that down here on the bottom of the card, kind of cattywampus. Then I'm going to get that splash, throw another of those mini Stampin' Dimensionals on there. Okay, there we go. So now the last thing that I want to do to this card is grab my Glossy Dots assortments, and I'm going to use the blue ones to add some fun dots to this card. So I'm going to start with the biggest one. These have really good adhesive on them. Let's see, I'm going to use the sticky side. I'm just going to kind of tuck one right under my vellum. Just kidding. I want that to be over my vellum because my vellum should be flat on my cardstock. So let's do that. Like I said, this adhesive is really good, so it's not wanting to let go. so we'll put that one there. And then I'm going to grab another big one. There we go. I'm going to tuck this one up underneath Splash. Okay, then I'm going to get one of these medium-sized ones, put it on the top here, and then I want a tiny one to go here, and then another tiny one to go up here. And there is our card, and yes, it opens the correct way. So for the inside, I'm going to grab another basic white piece of cardstock. This one is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And if you have a scrap of the designer series paper, like a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch, you could put that across the bottom or down the side. I don't have that. I think all I'm going to do is grab my Melon Mambo again. This is what I've been doing for pretty much all of my Sunny Splash cards this week. I just like excuses to stamp these little swimsuits. So I'm just going to put another swimsuit right here in the corner on the bottom. And it's ready to be added inside my card. There we go. I hope that you like this card as much as I do, and I hope I had a couple of good tips for you in making this. I know it was a little bit longer and more detailed than I usually do, but it's really easy stuff. There's nothing super complicated here. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, if I got too confusing somewhere in there, then don't hesitate to send me a message. Let me know, leave a comment, and I'll do my best to explain that to you a little bit better. Sometimes I get sidetracked and sometimes I just ramble. So, you never know. Alright, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I'll be back next week with more videos. The product list for this video is listed in the description, or you can click on over to my website and look at the card there with, again, the product list and the measurements. Thanks so much for watching. Happy stamping!